welcome back to Animal Adventures. My name is Kylynn and I've spent the past couple of months creating educational videos for you, and many of them have been about different types of animals, their care requirements, and things that are really important for you to know before adopting these different types of animals. So, assuming that you have done all your research, you have decided what type of animal is a good fit for you, and you've spoken with everybody in your family and all members of your household to make sure that they're all on board, finally it's time to adopt an animal. So let's dive right in and learn a little bit more about what the adoption process is like when you come to our shelter to adopt. First step in the adoption process is completing an adoption profile, and this is a form that allows our adoption counselors to get to know you and your family a little bit better and learn why you're interested in adopting a pet. So the first part of the form asks your general information, your name, your phone number, your address, and are you over 18? If you're younger than 18, you do need to come in with a parent or legal guardian who will be the responsible party in the adoption process. Next, we want to know about your housing situation. Do you own your house or do you rent your house? And if you rent, do you have permission from your landlord to own a pet? Next, we want to know a little bit more about who lives in the house with you. Are there young children? How many people live there? How much time do you spend in the home? And how often and for how long of periods of time are you outside of the home? For example, if you work really long shifts, if you're gone for 12 hours a day, then who will the person be who's responsible for letting a pet dog outside to go for potty breaks or taking them for walks? Lastly, we want to know about anybody in the home who has allergies. And this is an important thing to know because it helps us prevent animals from being adopted from us and then returned to us later on. The next part of the adoption profile asks about your pet history. We want to know what kinds of animals you've owned in the past. How long did you have those animals? Do you still have them? And if not, why not? Did they pass away from old age? Did you give them away to a friend or a family member? Have you surrendered an animal to an animal shelter before? Or if you still do have pets at home, how do you plan to introduce a new pet to the resident pets, if at all? We also want to know who's going to be the primary caregiver to this new animal you're adopting. And do they have any experience with this type of animal before? We also want to know why this type of animal. For example, if it's a leopard gecko like this and you've never owned one before, why are you interested in this species? Another thing that sometimes we encounter is parents come in to us and they say, I want to adopt a lizard for my son so he can learn about responsibility. But that raises some red flags for us because an animal is not a tool to teach a child how to be responsible for another life. Instead, a parent or a guardian always needs to be responsible for that animal. Even if the child is their caregiver on a daily basis, a parent or an adult needs to be checking up on that animal every day to make sure that they're healthy and being provided for appropriately. That should never be the sole responsibility of a child. Something else that sometimes people are surprised by is we do not allow people to adopt animals from us in order to give them as a gift to someone else. And that's because animals are such a huge responsibility. They require so much research and preparation to own and care for that it always needs to be the responsibility of the person owning that animal to make that decision for themselves so they can be properly prepared and excited about owning a pet. That decision should not be the responsibility of someone else who wants to give it to them as a gift. A really important part of adopting a new animal, if it's a smaller animal that requires an enclosure or a cage, is what is that enclosure or cage like? And before you adopt a pet from us, we will likely ask to see a photograph of the enclosure to make sure it's the appropriate size. It doesn't have any wire bottom, for example, and it has all of the appropriate elements necessary. Like it needs to be comfortable, it needs to be clean, and most of all, with very few exceptions, such as baby lizards, the bigger the better. No matter how often you take your pet out of its enclosure, it's still inevitably going to be spending a ton of time inside of it. So it needs to be a safe and comfortable environment for the animal. We'll also need to consider things like, where is the enclosure in the household? Is it next to a window where an animal such as a guinea pig or a rabbit could potentially overheat? Or is it in an area that's really drafty that could give your animal a cold potentially? Is it next to a heater vent or an air conditioning unit? Both of which are not a good option. And most importantly, are you planning on keeping an animal outdoors in a cage outside? With a couple of exceptions like certain types of birds, that's generally not going to be a good option for any animal, especially something like a rabbit, who a lot of people think can be kept in a hutch outdoors. And that's because animals need to be inside with us in order to be tamed and socialized and warm and comfortable. They need to feel like they're a part of our family. They need to be cared for. And how are you going to spend a lot of necessary time with your pet if it's kept locked up outside? So your animal needs to be indoors in a cozy enclosure inside the house with you, where you're able to keep it safe and clean. So now that you have gotten through all of the questions in the adoption profile, and the adoption counselors think that you are ready and are going to make a wonderful adopter, then it's time for the fun part. It's time for the matchmaking process, where you get to pick which animal is for you. And this process is where our adoption counselors really shine, because they know all of the animals. They know their personalities and their preferences, and they do an outstanding job matching you with a good fit for your home, your personality, and your lifestyle. So sometimes people commonly are keeping an eye on our website, and they already have a good idea of which animal they're interested in. And then other times people come in and they don't have an idea of an animal that they want yet. They just know, for example, they want a cat, but they haven't picked out which one, and they need to spend some time meeting multiple cats. And oftentimes folks come in and they look at the animals and they see one and something just clicks. There's a certain type of chemistry there that makes them a good fit for one another. So there's all different ways this process can unfold. Another thing that our adoption counselors are going to work with you on is matching the personality of the animal you're interested in with the type of household you have. For example, if you have young children or toddlers at home and they can be loud and rowdy and playful, then the adoption counselors can tell you good options of animals who are able to enjoy that type of home and participate in that type of lifestyle. On the other hand, there might be animals who prefer a quiet, mellow atmosphere. They're older, they just want to sleep and have a good time and enjoy some pets, and so the adoption counselors can point you in the direction of those ones. And then we need to think about other types of personality traits in animals. Some types of animals want a person around all the time to enjoy time with them and do a lot of activities together. And other animals are much more independent, and they're okay being alone during the day if you have to go to work or spend time by themselves. So no matter what type of animal you are interested in, we are bound to have a good fit for you eventually. Be patient, be open-minded, and appreciate the process. The last thing I want to talk to you about is an adoption fee. And a lot of students ask me, how much does it cost to buy an animal from your shelter? So I think there's a little bit of confusion that some people think that we're more like a pet store where we sell animals and their products to make a profit off of them. But that's not the case, because the adoption fees range from species to age of animals. And they definitely don't cover the amount of money that we put into an animal while they're here in our care. That's because we spay and neuter the dogs and cats and rabbits that come through here. We give any animal medical treatment if they need it, and we even microchip the cats and dogs before they're adopted. We also feed all of our animals a really high quality diet, and we give them beds and food and toys. So we invest a lot in the animals in our care, and we don't expect that money to be given back to us when somebody adopts an animal and pays the adoption fee. Instead, the adoption fee is more of a way for you to demonstrate to us that you are able to financially commit to the owning of an animal, because all animals are expensive. Some are more expensive than others. So by paying that adoption fee, you're telling us with that amount of money that you can afford to care for the cost of an animal, like taking it to a veterinarian and providing for all of its other needs. Now you know all about the adoption process at our our shelter. If you want to come in and adopt an animal from us, give yourself at least 1 hour and bring all the members of your household in to meet the potential pet. And if you want to adopt a dog from us and you already have a dog at home, be sure to bring your dog from home also. If you have any questions about the adoption process, feel free to give us a call. I will see you all in the new year with a brand new animal adventure.